Little Tom believed in magic, not the kind with wizards and spells, but the kind that made people's eyes shine, the kind that made ordinary moments extraordinary. It was this quiet, unspoken magic that led him to the old wooden park bench every day after school. In his hand, he carried a bright red apple, a small offering for someone who needed it. Tom never knew the old man's name, but he didn't need to. It was enough that the man smiled when he found the apple, a smile that spoke more words than any conversation. The park was Tom's special place. Birds chirped from the branches above, and the steady croak of frogs echoed from a pond nearby. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, making the whole world feel like it was alive. Tom loved the smell of the grass, the way the sun filtered through the canopy of trees, casting dappled shadows on the worn paths. He loved the way that even in a busy world, this park could make everything feel just a bit slower. Every afternoon, Tom would leave his apple on the bench, usually resting it right in the middle, like a small red jewel atop a weathered throne. And then he would wait, hidden behind a bush or seated at a distance, his eyes wide and eager as he watched. The old man, whose clothes were worn and hair grizzled, would come to the park with a slow, careful gait, his little brown dog walking dutifully beside him. Tom loved the way the man's eyes softened whenever he saw the apple, as if someone had reminded him that he wasn't forgotten. One Thursday afternoon, however, things were different. Tom approached the bench with his apple, but someone was already there. A man sat, not at all like the kind old man Tom was used to seeing. This new man wore a crisp black suit, and with him were two large bodyguards, each standing like statues, stern and unblinking. Tom's small hands clutched the apple tighter, his curiosity bubbling. Who was this man, and why was he sitting on his asterisk bench? The suited man seemed out of place among the gentle, worn beauty of the park. He was talking on a phone, his voice sharp and loud, the words jarring in contrast to the calming symphony of the park. Tom watched from behind a cluster of bushes, peeking through the leaves. The bodyguards glanced around but seemed uninterested in children. Tom waited, hoping the man might leave, but minutes turned into an hour, and he was still there, gesturing animatedly with his free hand. Tom frowned, staring at the apple. He could just walk away today, go home, and come back tomorrow. But he didn't like that idea. The old man would still come, and Tom didn't want him to think there wasn't an apple. After all, wasn't the whole point to make the man feel happy, to let him know that someone cared? Taking a deep breath, Tom made his decision. He tiptoed closer, his small feet quiet on the grass. As the man in the suit continued to talk, his voice filled with impatience, Tom carefully placed the apple on the bench, trying not to draw any attention. He stepped back quickly, darting away before anyone could notice, his heart pounding with the thrill of doing something brave. From his hiding spot, Tom waited. He waited until the suited man, with his bodyguards and sharp words, eventually left the bench. And just in time, for soon Tom saw the familiar figure of the old man making his way down the path, his little dog leading the way. The old man paused when he saw the apple on the bench, his face lighting up in the same gentle way it always did. He looked around, and Tom ducked a little lower behind his hiding place, holding his breath. The man picked up the apple, and after a moment, sat down on the bench, placing the fruit gently on his lap. His dog, a scruffy little terrier with a white-tipped tail, wagged and looked up at him, sniffing at the apple with interest. The old man smiled, a slow, genuine smile that seemed to chase away the lines of weariness from his face. He looked down at his companion. "You want some, don't you, buddy?" he murmured. Tom watched as the old man reached into his pocket, pulling out a small knife. Carefully, he sliced the apple into small pieces, offering one to his furry friend before taking a bite himself. The old man leaned back against the bench, savoring each bite as he watched the world go by. He stroked the dog's head gently as they both enjoyed the apple together, their simple routine unbothered by the bustle beyond the park's borders. A group of teenagers rode by on bicycles, their laughter ringing through the air. A mother pushed a stroller down the gravel path, her baby gurgling happily. The park had its own rhythm, a slow, soothing pulse that seemed to heal the weariness etched into the old man's face. Tom's chest swelled with a warm feeling as he watched the old man and his dog share the apple. The small gesture had made a difference, not just for the man, but for his little companion too. It was a simple moment, but to Tom, it felt like magic, the kind he believed in, the kind that made the world just a little bit better. He could see the old man talking softly to the dog as they finished the apple. It was a quiet conversation, punctuated by the occasional wag of the little terrier's tail. The dog's eyes were filled with trust, and his tail thumped against the bench in contentment. Tom couldn't hear the words, but he could tell that the man was telling his dog something happy, something hopeful. It was as though, for that moment, the weight of the world had been lifted from the old man's shoulders. As the old man and his dog finished the apple, Tom decided it was time to head home. He didn't need to wait any longer. He had seen what he came to see. The smile on the old man's face, the joy of a small act of kindness, was enough to fill Tom's heart all the way to the brim. He walked home with a bounce in his step, already thinking about tomorrow. Maybe he would bring 2 apples next time, one for the man and one for his dog. After all, everyone deserved a bit of kindness, even a scruffy little terrier with a wagging tail. The next day, Tom returned to the park, and the bench was empty again, just the way he liked it. He placed 2 apples there, side by side, and found his usual hiding spot. He watched, excitement bubbling inside him as the old man approached. The man paused, blinking at the sight of not 1 but 2 apples, a look of surprise spreading across his face. He chuckled, bending down to pet his dog. "Look at that, buddy. Seems like someone knows you're part of the deal now." The old man looked around, his eyes scanning the trees, the bushes, and the winding paths of the park, as if he was trying to catch a glimpse of his secret benefactor. Tom ducked down quickly, his heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. He peeked through the leaves, just enough to see the old man's expression soften, a hint of tears glistening in his eyes. He picked up the apples, his face bright with gratitude. He didn't need to know who left them. It was enough to feel the connection, to know that someone somewhere cared. Tom watched as the man sliced up the apples again, sharing with his dog, laughter and joy evident in their small world together. The old man tossed a piece of apple into the air, and the little terrier jumped up, catching it with a happy bark. Tom grinned, delighted at the sight. It was as if a little game had formed between them, the old man and his dog playing with a joy that seemed to light up the whole park. He knew he was too far away to hear the old man's words, but he didn't need to hear them to understand the message. It was kindness. It was connection. It was magic. Tom understood that what he had done was small, but it was important. In a world that could often be so big and busy and indifferent, a simple apple left on a bench was enough to make a difference, even if it was just a little one. For an 8-year-old, it was a kind of power, the power to make someone's day better, even if it was just a little bit. Tom realized that the magic he believed in wasn't a fantasy. It was something real that he could create with his own two hands. As Tom turned to leave, he heard a rustling from behind. He turned quickly, spotting the suited man from yesterday, leaning on a tree and watching the scene unfold with a curious expression. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, Tom wondered if he was in trouble. But then, something unexpected happened. The suited man smiled, a real, genuine smile that seemed so different from the sharp expressions Tom had seen before. He nodded, as if to say, "Well done, kid." Tom grinned back, giving the man a small wave before hurrying off towards home. His heart felt lighter than ever. He didn't know who the man was, or why he had been there, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that his apples made people smile, and maybe that smile would spread from one person to the next, like ripples in the pond that rested just beyond the bench. Kindness is contagious, and often the smallest gestures have the greatest impact. If Tom's story reminds you of the magic we can create through simple acts of kindness, why not share that magic today? Leave something small for someone, a smile, a compliment, or even an apple. Let's make the world a little brighter, one kind act at a time.